So this was a highly requested video on how to get into UCSD. And in no way am I guaranteeing that you're going to get accepted into UCSD, but one thing I can assure you is that if you do not do at least one thing explained in this video, then you will not get into UCSD. These will increase your chances, and I also acquired this stuff not only from my own personal experience, but from the experience of others as well. First and foremost, don't apply just because of the name of the school. Anything regarding alumni or some other superficial reason, or else you're going to end up hating things if you actually get accepted into UCSD because it's not the campus for you. Make sure you apply because you feel like you can bring something to the UCSD community. You're going to be applying to UCSD, and then most likely you've taken AP classes to make yourself more competitive. They should be taken freshman year, and I recommend taking only 2 each year and not more than 3, and only take 3 if you feel like you can really excel in all those courses. Because it's doing yourself a disservice to take, for example, 4 AP classes and not doing well in them. And it's way better to get 2 A's in 2 AP classes than get B's and C's when you take 4 AP classes. It's very important to have a good amount of units to start off with, because the more units you start off with, the earlier pass time you'll have when picking your classes. Having an early pass time is an advantage for UCSD. For instance, because some classes fill up with no delay. So if you get a later pass time, you'll end up either not getting into a class that you may need to enroll in, or a required class for your major, or a class with a bad instructor, or a lecture section with a bad TA, or just a class that's in an inconvenient time for you. So it's really important to pass your AP classes, but also when it comes to classes, take a good variety of classes. Try to get all A's and B's, preferably, but a B or C or something here and there is not going to ruin everything. Pay attention to sophomore and junior year, because those are the grades that the admission boards tend to review the most, and they consider the rigor of the classes that were taken. The average GPA to get into UCSD is a 4.3, and more importantly, instead of considering solely your GPA, make sure that you're at the top 10% of your class. Most people who get accepted into UCSD are at the top 10% of their class, so don't take your GPA and assume that just because you have a really high GPA that you're going to get into UCSD. Or if you have a low GPA, you're not going to get in. Because I know people who have had 4.12s or above who did not get into UCSD for one reason or another. And I also know students with 3.9s and 4.0s who got into UCSD. So it's not just a numbers game when getting into UCSD. The lowest SAT score that I've known getting admitted to UCSD is a 1500. And I'm sure there's students who got in with lower scores and stuff, but that's just the lowest one that I personally knew of. Take the SAT more than once because they take the highest score. If you've already been getting A's, then you should already be prepared to take the SAT. Otherwise, that would be a good reason to take an AP class, such as AP English, obviously. One thing that many do is that they apply as an undeclared. I did not know that when I applied. Some say it's a good idea, some say it's a bad idea. But if I had to pick something and conclude on what was a good idea and what was not, applying undeclared would be one, because you're avoiding applying to an impacted major. This gives you a better chance of ultimately getting in. For example, thousands and thousands of people will apply to international studies, communication, computer science. So the chances of you getting admitted become more low because it's such a big pool of applicants. So the admissions committee has to be more strict when picking on who's going to be admitted out of these thousands and thousands of students who want to be in that same major. There is an option of applying to a non-impacted major. Problem is that pretty much all majors at UCSD are impacted, but there are still a couple that might be non-impacted. Applying as an undeclared has gotten more tricky because of how popular UCSD is, and more applicants result in more undeclared applicants. The major declaration part of the app is also not to be mistaken with choosing one of the 7 colleges at UCSD. I'll have another video on this, which will be linked in the description below, because I do not want to make this video super long, and because this is not the most important part of a UCSD application. But there is a lot about this that does matter and is still important. But do understand that UCSD is further arranged into 7 different colleges. Besides the overall university general class requirements, each college has its own general college requirements. You can choose to default in any college, but typically the applicant will get to request their top 3 choices. You do not have to choose a certain college, but what college you would want to get into will depend on your major and how compatible it is with the college's general requirements. Make sure when you're applying to UCSD, you apply early. Not because it's going to help you get in at all, but because it's better to take the time to put together a quality application. You're not going to be able to do that if you apply at the last minute. So when you apply, make sure you start when the UC app window opens no later than mid-October, because then you'll at least have an entire month to work on the application. So one of the most important, if not the most important component to your application is the personal statement. Make sure you write multiple drafts of your personal statement, and many students I knew had their personal statements reviewed by their English professor or teacher to have them edit them. So I recommend doing this if you need someone to give you advice on this area. When doing the personal statement, I recommend including some sort of personal anecdote that demonstrates who you are and what you can bring to the UCSD community. Try to avoid sob stories at all costs, because obviously a lot of students are just going to write a sob story about why they want to go to college and all the hardships they had or that they went through. So instead of writing a sob story, showcase your best attributes. Hope you all benefited from this clip, and that if this is the first time you've had stuff like this explained to you, that you can now apply it to your application to UCSD or other UC campuses or any colleges in general. And if you not get in for some reason, make sure you realize that you did not get in because you were not capable, or they don't believe in you, or because the quality of your application was less than someone else who got it. Remember that there's very few spots and many qualified students. So just because someone else got in doesn't mean that they're better than you. Do not get discouraged if you do not get into UCSD, because there's tons of other amazing universities. And also, if you didn't get into UCSD as an undergrad, you could either look into transferring or getting into UCSD as a graduate. If you do happen to get into UCSD, be very proud, because UCSD is pretty much the most applied to school in the nation and pretty much the planet. So that's really impressive. If you want to know anything about UCSD, or for there to be a specific video, let me know in the comments.